Emma Reynolds stood tall in her penthouse apartment, gazing out over the city. The skyline shimmered under the golden afternoon sun, casting long shadows over the streets below. She sipped from her glass of imported champagne, the bubbles tickling her nose, as she took in the view. She was living the life every woman dreamed of: high-end designer clothes, expensive cars, a massive bank account, and a penthouse suite with floor-to-ceiling windows. She had worked hard for everything she had, clawing her way up from a modest background to the heights of success. But as the years passed, Emma became more and more accustomed to getting what she wanted, when she wanted it. She had developed a sharp edge, a ruthless drive that cut through everything and everyone that stood in her way. But with success came entitlement. And as Emma stared at the glittering city lights, her gaze fell on the small, insignificant detail that always irked her: the floors of her apartment. A woman in her late 40s, Clara, was kneeling near the floor, scrubbing it with a worn-out rag. Her hands were calloused, and her clothes, too large, faded and stained, showed the strain of years spent in service. Despite the hard work, she always seemed to be smiling, even when no one was watching. But today, Emma's irritation flared. She had just returned from a business meeting and was exhausted, but there was Clara, still cleaning. The floor was damp. It wasn't shiny enough. She had paid a significant amount for cleaning services, and this was not what she had expected. With a sharp breath, Emma approached. "Clara," she said, her voice clipped, "this floor isn't even dry. What do I pay you for?" Clara looked up, her eyes tired but composed. "I'm sorry, Miss Reynolds," she replied softly. "I'll make sure to clean it again." "I don't want you to make sure," Emma snapped. "I pay you to do a perfect job. You can't even do something as simple as drying the floor properly? Do I need to remind you how much I pay for this?" Clara didn't respond immediately. She simply nodded and went back to scrubbing, but her shoulders sagged as if Emma's words weighed down on her more than she let on. Emma's gaze softened for a brief moment as she watched the woman work, but her thoughts quickly snapped back to the stress of her day. "You know, Clara," Emma added, her voice dripping with condescension, "I'm not sure why you even bother with this job. You should know better by now. It's not like you have any real skills, right?" The words hung in the air. Emma stood tall, waiting for the response that never came. Clara just continued cleaning, her expression neutral. "Never mind," Emma muttered, storming off into the next room. She slammed the door behind her, her irritation building. But Clara's eyes never left the floor. The next week, Emma had an unexpected breakdown. Her car, the latest model of a luxury brand, had broken down in the middle of the street. The rain had started pouring, and Emma had no choice but to wait by the side of the road, watching as the traffic around her moved steadily forward. She fumbled with her phone, trying to call a tow service, but the reception was terrible. Her frustration reached a boiling point when she noticed an all-too-familiar figure walking down the street. It was Clara, the cleaner, carrying a small bag and heading home after another long day of work. "Clara!" Emma called out, her voice sharp despite the rain. "You there? I need help." Clara turned, recognizing Emma in an instant. Without a moment's hesitation, she walked over. "Miss Reynolds, is everything all right?" Clara asked, her voice calm despite the sudden rainstorm. "I'm stranded," Emma said, her voice breaking through her composure. "My car broke down, and I can't get a tow truck to come out here in this weather." Clara looked around, noticing the heavy rain, and then nodded. "I can give you a lift," she said. "It's not far, and I'm headed in the same direction." Emma hesitated, the thought of accepting help from someone she had just insulted weighing on her. But the rain was relentless, and her phone's battery was dying. "Fine," Emma said, her tone softer now. "Thank you." As Clara led her to a small, weathered car parked a little further down the street, Emma couldn't help but notice the quiet dignity that Clara carried with her. She had never really looked at her before. Not beyond the surface, anyway. But now, as she stepped into the worn vehicle, Emma saw a side of Clara she had never noticed before. There was no judgment in Clara's eyes. Only empathy. The car wasn't much. The upholstery was cracked, the air conditioning didn't work, and the seats were faded. But Clara drove steadily through the rain, her hands firm on the wheel. They didn't speak much on the way, but Emma couldn't help but feel a strange sense of unease in the silence. When they finally arrived at Emma's penthouse, Emma opened the door to leave, but Clara spoke up. "I didn't always do this job, you know," Clara said quietly. Emma froze mid-step, turning toward Clara, who was still sitting behind the wheel, the rain falling steadily outside. What do you mean? Clara smiled faintly. I used to have a different life. A different career. Emma raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite herself. A different life? Clara nodded. I wasn't always cleaning other people's homes, Miss Reynolds. I used to be someone. I was an architect. A well-known one, too. Emma blinked in surprise. Architect? You... I had no idea. Clara chuckled softly. Most people don't. Not now. But I once designed some of the most beautiful buildings in the city. Homes, offices, landmarks. My designs were admired, and I had everything I needed. Emma shifted in her seat. What happened? Clara's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I lost it all. Everything. It was a series of bad investments, poor choices, and a lot of betrayal. I made one mistake after another, and in the blink of an eye, I was left with nothing. Emma sat back, stunned. She had no idea. The woman who had been cleaning her penthouse, who she had treated with such disdain, had once shaped the very city she now lived in. She had built structures that people admired, and now she was cleaning the homes of those who had the luxury of living in them. Clara turned to Emma, her face calm but steady. I learned the hard way that nothing lasts forever. But some people, no matter how much they have, never forget where they come from. I still have my pride. As Clara finished her story, Emma's mind raced. She didn't know how to process everything she had just heard. She had assumed Clara was just a cleaner, a woman of little consequence in her perfect, well-ordered life. But the truth was far different. As the rain continued to pour, Emma felt a strange sense of guilt creeping in. Before she could say anything else, Clara glanced at her phone and then looked up, a serious expression on her face. Miss Reynolds, Clara said, her voice low. I've been meaning to ask you. Have you ever heard of a woman named Veronica Devereux? The name hit Emma like a freight train, and her heart skipped a beat. Veronica Devereux was a name from her past. A name that she had hoped to never hear again. Emma's pulse quickened. Why do you ask? Clara's eyes met Emma's, her expression unreadable. You'd be surprised who cleaned your past. Emma's mind was racing as Clara's words echoed in her ears. You'd be surprised who cleaned your past. The name Veronica Devereux sent a cold shiver down Emma's spine. Veronica. That name was synonymous with one of the most painful chapters in Emma's life. Veronica had been Emma's business partner, her mentor, and, as far as Emma was concerned, her downfall. Veronica had been a powerful figure in the fashion industry, a woman with immense talent, a strong presence, and the kind of reputation that could make or break a designer. For years, Veronica had been Emma's guiding light. They had worked together to build Emma's brand, her empire. But things had turned sour when Emma's ambitions started to outgrow her mentor's. Veronica, with her calculating eyes and steady composure, had always seemed untouchable. But Emma had never realized that Veronica's power came at a cost. One that Emma had not fully understood until it was too late. Veronica had ruthlessly manipulated situations to make sure Emma was always in her shadow. When Emma finally gathered the courage to break away and start her own line, Veronica had ensured that Emma's reputation would take a hit. It had been one sabotage after another. From stolen designs to rumors spread behind closed doors, Emma's dreams had been trampled under Veronica's feet. But what did Clara know about Veronica? Clara, Emma said, her voice shaking slightly. How do you know Veronica Devereux? Clara looked at Emma, her eyes steady but full of something Emma couldn't quite place. I don't just know her, Miss Reynolds, Clara said, her voice tinged with sadness. I used to work for her. Emma's heart raced. She had no idea what to say. She wanted to ask more, but her mind was still reeling from the initial shock. What do you mean you worked for her? Emma asked. I thought you were an architect? Clara nodded, her eyes drifting away from Emma's as if she were lost in a memory. I was. But before that, I was Veronica's personal assistant. I worked for her when she was building her empire. I was the one who made sure everything was in place, from her meetings to the designs, the fashion shows. I was always there, right under her wing. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She had never made the connection between Clara and Veronica. To think that the woman she had treated so poorly was someone who had been so deeply connected to her own past. It was too much for her to process in one moment. Clara. I don't understand, Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. How could you have been with Veronica and ended up here? Cleaning houses. Clara's face hardened slightly as she spoke. You wouldn't believe the truth even if I told you, Miss Reynolds. Sometimes the people we trust most, the ones who guide us and show us the way, end up being the very ones who ruin our lives. Emma swallowed hard, the pieces of the puzzle slowly starting to come together. She had always wondered why things had gone south so quickly after she had distanced herself from Veronica. Now, hearing Clara's words, Emma felt the weight of everything she had lost. But there was still more. Clara, Emma said, her voice trembling. What happened between you and Veronica? How did you end up like this? Clara's eyes flickered, as if she were debating whether or not to continue. Finally she spoke. Veronica wasn't always the person she became. She started out with ambition, like everyone else. But somewhere along the way, she lost herself. The pressure, the greed, it consumed her. And I was always there, cleaning up her messes, making sure everything was perfect. I did everything she asked of me, no questions. But then one day, I found out something I wasn't supposed to know. Emma leaned in, her curiosity piqued. What did you find out? Clara hesitated, her face darkening. I found out that Veronica had been stealing designs from other designers. She'd been passing them off as her own, and all the success she had wasn't really hers to begin with. She had ruined lives, broken people, all in the name of success. I couldn't stand it anymore. I couldn't be part of it. Emma's heart pounded in her chest. You're saying Veronica stole other people's designs? Clara nodded. Yes. But that wasn't even the worst part. When I confronted her about it, she threatened me. She made sure that I lost everything. She ruined my career, my reputation. She spread lies about me, made sure I was blacklisted in the industry. And that was it. I had nothing left. My career, my identity. It was all taken from me. Emma felt a pang of guilt. She had never known any of this. She had always assumed that the fallout between her and Veronica had been purely about business. But now, it seemed that there was so much more beneath the surface. I'm sorry, Emma whispered, not knowing what else to say. Clara gave her a small, sad smile. There's nothing to apologize for, Miss Reynolds. I'm not asking for your sympathy. I'm just telling you the truth. The conversation lingered in Emma's mind long after Clara had left. She paced around her penthouse, the weight of her past decisions pressing heavily on her shoulders. How could she have been so blind? How could she have trusted Veronica, someone who had no regard for others? As the days passed, Emma found herself going over the details of Clara's story again and again. She couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of responsibility. Veronica's actions had not only impacted Clara but had also left a trail of destruction in the industry. Emma herself had been caught in that wake, unknowingly complicit in the consequences of Veronica's lies. She found herself grappling with her feelings of guilt and shame. For the first time in years, she questioned everything she had worked so hard to build. Was it all just an illusion? A product of someone else's stolen success? One evening, while sitting at her desk and going over the latest fashion collection she was preparing for her upcoming show, Emma received a call. It was from Clara. Miss Reynolds, Clara said, her voice urgent. You need to be careful. Veronica's not done with you yet. Emma's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Clara's voice dropped to a whisper. She's coming for you. She's always got something up her sleeve. I thought you should know. Before Emma could respond, the line went dead. Her pulse quickened, a cold chill creeping down her spine. Veronica was back. And this time, Emma wasn't sure if she was prepared for what was coming next. The following morning, Emma received an anonymous package at her door. Inside, there was a small, carefully folded piece of paper with a single phrase written in bold letters. I know everything. It's time to pay for your sins. Emma's blood ran cold as she stared at the note. Whoever had sent it knew her darkest secrets. They knew what she had done, and what Veronica had done to her. As she glanced around her penthouse, Emma realized she wasn't safe anymore. Veronica had found a way to strike back, and she wasn't going to stop until she got everything she wanted. But who had sent the note? Was it Veronica, or was it someone else? Someone closer than she thought? Emma Reynolds sat at her desk, staring at the anonymous note she had received earlier. Her hands shook as she turned it over, her mind racing. "I know everything. It's time to pay for your sins." The words were etched into her mind, pulling at her conscience with a force she couldn't escape. She had spent years building her life, her career, brick by brick, clawing her way to the top. But now, it felt like everything was unraveling. What did the note mean? And why had it arrived now? Emma could feel the weight of her past mistakes hanging over her like a shadow. The way she had treated Clara, the woman who had once been connected to Veronica. The lies she had been complicit in, the betrayals, the compromises she had made to get ahead. But it wasn't just her career that was at risk anymore. She was being pulled into something much deeper. Something that connected her directly to Veronica's dark past. And the consequences of her actions, or inaction, could finally catch up with her. Just as she sat there contemplating her next move, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Clara. "We need to meet. It's happening. Be careful. Veronica's coming for you." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She needed to know more, to understand what Clara had meant. She couldn't afford to ignore this anymore. The meeting place was a small cafe on the outskirts of town, far from the eyes of Emma's usual high society circles. Clara had insisted on it. When Emma arrived, Clara was already sitting at a corner table, a cup of coffee in front of her. The rain from earlier that morning had begun to clear, leaving the air thick with humidity. The sun cast a soft golden hue over the street outside, but Emma couldn't shake the sense of foreboding that hung in the air. Clara's face was serious, her eyes darting around the cafe, as if she were expecting someone to jump out at them at any moment. "Clara," Emma said as she sat down. "What's going on? Who's after me?" Clara took a deep breath. "Veronica. She's been watching you. She's been tracking your every move." "Why?" Emma asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "What does she want?" Clara stared into her coffee, her expression tight. "She wants revenge. For everything you took from her. For everything I took from her. She's not going to stop until she's completely destroyed you." Emma's heart sank. She had always known that Veronica was ruthless, but hearing this from Clara made everything feel real. It wasn't just business anymore. It wasn't just about competition in the fashion world. This was personal. And Emma could feel the walls closing in on her. "I never wanted this," Emma whispered. "I never wanted to hurt anyone. But I didn't know." Clara's eyes softened as she reached across the table and gently placed her hand over Emma's. "You didn't know because you weren't looking. But it's never too late to make things right. Veronica is coming for you, yes, but she's also coming for me. And we need to stand together if we're going to stop her." Emma looked at Clara, her heart heavy with guilt. The woman sitting across from her had once been her colleague, her friend. But Emma had overlooked her. Had underestimated her. Now, Clara was offering her a lifeline, a chance to make things right. But Emma wasn't sure she deserved it. "Clara," Emma said, her voice breaking. "I treated you like nothing. I took you for granted. I don't know if I can ever make up for that." Clara smiled gently. "You're not alone in this anymore. You don't have to make up for everything. Just make it right now. Stand with me. We can fight this together." Emma spent the next few days in a daze, trying to come to terms with everything Clara had told her. The more she thought about Veronica, the more she realized how deeply her own actions had been intertwined with the chaos of others' lives. It wasn't just about building her empire. It was about the people she had trampled on along the way. She began to understand that Veronica's obsession with success had come from the same place as her own, a desire to be recognized, to be respected, to matter in a world that had a tendency to forget people like them. But Veronica's path had been different. She had used manipulation, deceit, and betrayal to secure her place at the top. Emma, too, had made compromises, but her moral compass had never fully abandoned her. Now, she had a chance to prove it. Emma called a meeting with her team, something she had never done in such a personal way before. She spoke honestly about her past mistakes, her wrongdoings, and the damage they had caused. She told them about Veronica, about the secret she had kept hidden for so long, and about her desire to make things right. "I've hurt people," Emma admitted, her voice steady. "But I'm not going to run from it anymore. I'm going to face the consequences, and I'm going to make things right." The team listened, stunned by her honesty, but Emma could see the change in their eyes. They respected her more now than they had before. She had shown vulnerability, something she had never allowed herself to do. Emma's decision was clear. She would no longer allow herself to be controlled by fear. She would face Veronica head-on and do whatever it took to put things right. Not just for herself, but for everyone she had hurt along the way. The confrontation with Veronica happened sooner than Emma had expected. It was on a rainy afternoon when Emma received a message from Clara. "She's here. We need to act now." Emma immediately made her way to the location Clara had specified. An old, abandoned building on the outskirts of the city. It was the perfect place for a final showdown, far away from prying eyes. The location felt eerily familiar, and as Emma walked inside, the memories flooded back. This was where Veronica had once orchestrated the rise of her empire. This was the place where she had manipulated people, crushed careers, and built her legacy on the backs of others. When Emma and Clara stepped into the building, Veronica was waiting for them. She stood in the center of the room, a smug smile playing on her lips. Her eyes gleamed with a cold, calculated malice. "So you've finally come," Veronica said, her voice dripping with contempt. "I knew you would. You always were weak, Emma." Emma stood tall, her heart pounding, but her resolve was stronger than it had ever been. "I'm not weak anymore, Veronica. I'm not running from this. I'm here to face you." Clara stepped forward, standing beside Emma. "And I'm here to stop you." Veronica laughed, a low, mocking sound. "You think you can stop me? You've always been beneath me, both of you." But Emma didn't flinch. "I'm not here to fight you, Veronica. I'm here to show you that I'm not afraid of you anymore. I'm here to take responsibility for the mistakes I've made and make things right. You can't destroy me anymore." Veronica's face twisted with rage. "You think this is about making things right? You think you can undo the damage? You can't. It's too late." But Emma stood firm. "No, Veronica. It's never too late." In the end, the confrontation wasn't about winning or losing. It wasn't about taking revenge or proving who was stronger. It was about redemption. It was about recognizing the mistakes that had been made and choosing to change, even when it felt impossible. Veronica, seeing that Emma had changed, that she had finally taken responsibility for her actions, backed down. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but Veronica saw the truth in Emma's eyes. The truth that Emma no longer needed to be defined by her past mistakes. Veronica may have tried to tear Emma down, but in the end, it was Emma who rose from the ashes. Emma turned to Clara, her voice full of gratitude. "Thank you. I don't think I would have found my way without you." Clara smiled softly. "You found your way because you chose to. You chose to face your past, to make it right. That's the hardest thing to do." As Emma and Clara walked away from the abandoned building, they knew the journey was far from over. But one thing was certain. Emma had changed. And that change would last far longer than any success she had ever achieved. "I've hurt people," Emma admitted, her voice steady but raw. "But I'm not going to pretend anymore. This company, this success, it cannot stand on stolen ground or silent cruelty." Her team sat in stunned silence. Emma took a breath and continued. "Effective immediately, we are opening an independent audit of every design linked to Veronica Devereux. Any work proven to be stolen will be credited, compensated, or withdrawn, no matter the cost." There were murmurs. Shock. Fear. But Emma didn't stop. "And Clara," Emma said, turning toward the doorway. The room gasped as Clara stepped in. "I want you back," Emma said. "Not as a cleaner. Not as a favor. But as who you truly are." Clara's eyes widened. "I want you as our chief architectural consultant. Your name. Your designs. Your legacy, restored." Silence. Then Clara spoke, her voice calm but powerful. "Do you know why I kept cleaning your floors, Emma?" Emma shook her head. "Because every stain reminded me that dirt can be removed, but character takes humility." Tears streamed down Emma's face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For what I said. For what I didn't see." Clara nodded. "Then let this be the last thing you overlook." 2 weeks later, Veronica Devereux stood frozen as flashing cameras surrounded her luxury townhouse. Documents had leaked. Lawsuits stacked. Designers came forward. Dozens of them. The audit. The testimonies. The evidence Clara had quietly preserved for years. It was over. As Veronica was escorted past the press, her eyes locked onto Clara, standing beside Emma across the street. "You ruined me," Veronica hissed. Clara replied softly. "No. I only stopped cleaning up your mess." Months later, Emma walked through a new building. Glass, light, elegance. A plaque stood at the entrance. Designed by Clara Hayes. Emma smiled. For the first time her success felt real. She turned to Clara. "Funny how life works." Clara smiled back. "Yes. Sometimes the person scrubbing your floor knows exactly where your cracks are." Emma nodded. "And sometimes, they're the ones who help you rebuild." Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe.